So this is data security in Power BI round 2. This was time to highlight some of the changes that came out with the announcement about premium, and just to augment some of the previous training that I'd already done in this space. So I will encourage you to, if you have not viewed the original first round, to go ahead and do so at your convenience, as well as that's still loaded in our system. Let's get kicked off here. So this is really around some of the conversation that I have with a number of customers regarding their concerns about Power BI and what happens to their data. So a couple refreshers. This is a little bit about who I am and Pragmatic Works. You've seen a lot of that scrolling by, so I'm going to keep on going here. The key here for you to remember is that if you're trying to track down some of the other information I make available, you can check out the Pragmatic Works site as well as dataonwheels.com for blog and more information. So quick review of that 411 session. So those of you who may not have actually been able to participate in that, this is some of the topics that we covered during that first round. Power BI's compliance, encryption levels, what happens in all the encryption. I'm not digging into these. I just want you to be aware that this is kind of the basis for the round 2. On-premises gateway, how it's secured, what happens with encryption and the type of ports that are used, that type of thing, as well as a brief overview of row-level security in Power BI and analysis services. So if you are interested in digging into those sessions, there are blog posts on my blog about those, as well as that first session covers these topics in a considerable more detail, and we're just following up on some of the changes that have been made. This is my public service announcement. Those of you who have not heard me present on this, there is an option to turn off the ability to share content with external users. We recommend that this is disabled, and we also recommend that publish to web is disabled, assuming that you have not already disabled those in your organization. So I am going to switch real quick. I do this because a lot of people are not aware these are on by default in Power BI and should be disabled for your organization. If you've been running Power BI for a while, then you will have, it'll be good for you to understand where these are at so you can actually make the change. So in this case, when we're in Power BI, the way to get to this information and make those changes are when you're in Power BI, you need to be an admin, and you should be able to see the admin portal. I'll highlight here. So you can see here from the gear, you basically want to go to admin portal. Once you click admin portal, you will now come to this page here. Depending on the level of permissions you have will determine what you can see here. But I bring this up because this is the primary security hole that we're seeing people have not had a chance to close yet. When you go to tenant settings inside the portal, you have two options here: share with external users and publish to web. Both of these expose your data and content outside of your organization. I highly recommend that if you have not already done so, or you're not sure if your organization has done so, that be one of your highest priorities when working with Power BI, is to make sure that that is disabled unless you have a specific reason to enable it for your organization. You'll notice that sharing content with external users has the option to actually specify security groups if you want limited availability. This is not possible for publish to web. It's either available or not. The reason I call both of these out, I'm pretty sure that there's no reason for you to share data with me in most cases, unless I'm a business partner. So you would typically disable sharing content with external users. You notice here, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in for enabled for entire organization. So just basically click this button, it'll disable it. And then publish for web is also enabled for your entire organization. What's important to understand about publish to web is that publish to web is one of those scenarios that allows you to, it's really cool. You can publish a dashboard publicly in a public space, but no actual security is applied in Power BI. It is considered 100% open in that scenario. So I just want to bring those items up and make sure that you're aware of those right away. And that's my public service announcement for the day. All right. So if you have not seen those, not sure where your organization is at, I highly recommend that you go ahead and resolve those issues. Now back to our regular scheduled performance here. So I showed you where to disable those. I show those when I do dashboards in a day and so on because I feel it's very important for all of our users to be sure to turn those off if they're not planning to use them. I've yet to meet a customer who was, really wants to use those and in many cases did not know they were actually on by default. So now you are aware of that. Today's topics, updated security content. We're going to talk a little bit about content packs, group workspaces, app workspaces. Microsoft made a few announcements in the last month that changed some of the sharing recommendations that I had provided. We're going to talk about Power BI Premium. We are going to talk about Office 365 and security groups and changes to free. And then these are some of the topics that were brought up in the end of the last session, including auditing coverage. I wanted to basically show you, I'll dig a little bit deeper into what you have for auditing. Microsoft has made some improvements in that space as well. So I would like to make sure that you have what you need in that scenario so you can actually work through that. So today, if you have questions, I want to say if you have questions, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we will follow up with questions at the end, and we'll just kind of go through them in sequence. I'm willing, to answer questions around security related to Power BI, even on topics from the original presentation, until we run out of time in the road. So moving forward, sharing has been updated. In the previous seminar, what I talk about is how to effectively use content packs and group workspaces and what that means in sharing. Microsoft made a significant change in the service, Power BI service, by giving us Power BI apps and app workspaces. The change is very positive. Content packs are essentially going to go away. So if you are actively using those in your organization, you probably noticed a change in the last month to apps. I highly recommend you go ahead and make that change. A number of reasons. Functionally, from an apps perspective, it encapsulates everything you have, whether as a single unit of work that you're now able to distribute, and more functionality is going to be wrapped around apps as we move forward. The reason we bring it up from a security standpoint, apps is one way of sharing. Content packs was another way of sharing in a read-only type fashion. Power BI apps lets us do the same thing, and it kind of solves those kind of problems. Group workspaces have been replaced by app workspaces. App workspaces, what's nice about those, and from a security standpoint and a deployment standpoint, I can now actually make changes in app workspaces to my apps, and they will not impact the deployed product until it's pushed out. Some of the future stuff that Microsoft announced yesterday is that you will eventually have the ability to update individual assets and push individual components of the apps out. So apps is where Microsoft is going. It does impact what we talk about in sharing, and I want to make sure that you are fully aware of those changes that have come. So when we talked about content packs previously, we talked about their ability of content packs to package up and share in a read-only and secure fashion within your organization. Power BI apps replaces that context. Group workspaces were something I didn't really care for, and app workspaces have the same issue in that you cannot actually give security groups permissions to those workspaces yet. It's still by individual. That is, Microsoft is aware that that is a problem. They're working on getting that change in. I don't have insight into when that change will be made, but it still is a maintenance issue, and does limit the effective use of some of these tools and separations within the Microsoft Power BI stack. But it comes to managing your security and keeping things up to date. So that's some of the things that have been updated from Microsoft. Here's a little bit more detail around the apps and the app workspaces that we've been talking about. Shared development. The big ones are Power BI apps will support deploying read-only assets for distribution, something that content packs actually could not do or did not do as effectively as we would like. So you can now actually plug Power BI apps to actually support read-only, and giving the ability for pro users or premium users to consume those apps in a read-only setting. And we'll talk more about what premium users impact. Now, at the moment, you can only add users to workspaces, still no security groups, but still limitation, as far as I'm concerned, in the effective use of workspaces to manage security within your environment, unless your organization is small enough to manage that on that scale. So as we move forward on that, this is definitely something that you want to be aware of and start implementing. Roadmap items. I typically do not talk future in the work that I do, primarily because most of us can't use preview or those type of things, and we need to be sensitive to that. However, there comes a point when we need to talk about where Microsoft is headed and based on announcements they have made. So App Workspaces, which is the replacing group workspaces. If you are familiar with doing this, and if your IT team and network management team or whoever manages your Active Directory or Office 365 groups, they just love how every time someone creates a workspace that they get a new group. That will change. So in the future, the workspaces will actually be workspaces. They will not create a corresponding Office 365 group, but it will allow you to essentially, I think it's going to go hand in hand with when they allow us to put security groups into a workspace and manage security in a broader fashion, more enterprise style, like we are used to doing when implementing with Active Directory. So the other thing is Power BI apps will allow eventually direct push of apps to the users. This is significant, in particular when you're dealing with executive level consumers. Right now, the only way for them to get the dashboards for them to see personally is they actually have to go and upload the app. This is one of those scenarios where that end user who is really not familiar with Power BI should be able to be a recipient of a direct push of those apps that is coming. It really does, it's an easy view saying that's happening. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, select publish from your workspace. So kind of quickly as we do this, I just want to show you where App Workspaces are and how to create a Power BI app and understand the security implications. It's a little different than before. So let's switch over. Welcome back to my Power BI workspace. If you've not seen the new, well, by now everybody should have seen the new workspace and layout. So like in this case, if I look at the workspaces I have available, you can see I have a number of workspaces, including my what is an app workspace, which is the one I created brand new. So what we're going to do here is a couple things. We're going to go ahead and create an app workspace. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, you just basically add a name. Let's call this webinar workspace. And here's where we start talking about some of the security pieces. Only approved members can see what's inside. That is pretty typical. Microsoft's recommending you leave that where it's at, and also to leave where members can edit Power BI content. So in this case, if we want to add a user, like in my case, I can add my son here. So Andrew Hughes. I'm going to go ahead and add him to this workspace. And now he's just showing up as a member. I can make him a member or an admin. Primarily the difference between member and admin is who manages who can be added to this group. Now creating this workspace, the goal of this workspace is to give me a place to build my app. That's really the goal in this scenario. So that's what's different between what we did in content packs versus what's here. Because now I'm creating this app workspace, I'm not creating all my content first. So we go ahead and save that. And now you can see I have my new workspace and who can be in here and so on. And then I can go, and since I'm in a workspace, let's see here. You can see that I don't actually have anything in this workspace at the moment. But I can, let's see here. Browse the workspace just so you can see working on creating all this. While it's working, the other big change is that where we used to have to search for content packs on the get data form, so like we're on get data here, we would actually go out to my organization to look for what used to be content packs. Now when I go to my organization, I can still see the old content packs that we had, but now we actually are going to be looking at the apps, my organization apps, which I don't see any here. which is kind of odd. Not sure why that's not showing up in that spot. But we also go up here to apps on this side, and I can start seeing what is an app workspace. This is a workspace that I have available that I've created. So my content packs aren't showing up in the same spot. My apps are showing up here because I've actually uploaded that app. So if I go to Get Apps, I should be able to find, oh, it's not published yet. That's why it's waiting. When I actually publish my other app workspace, I'll see that, or my other app, out of my new workspace, I'll get that app. And it's secure, and we can actually do it. So you can actually choose who gets to see it. So when we publish it, I'm going to go back in here and grab, let's go into what is an app workspace so we can see what I have here. So this is, you can see here we have a new introducing this, update the app. We can create a new app or create a dashboard within this context. We can, once we update the app, it'll ask us about publishing. So you can see we have the ability to add details, content, and so on. But we also have the ability to enter access. So this is where we have the problem. Specific individuals or group. Currently, the group that's supported is not as clean as it sounds. We actually have to specify individuals or distribution groups, but not security groups at the moment. So there's still some work to be done here from Microsoft's perspective, and then you can push the update. So I'm not going to dig much more into these app workspaces and apps. I just want you to be aware that they're here. These are the replacements, and they do provide a level of security about who can see the content. So you can actually, when you publish, you can say, hey, here's people who can see that in their app workspace, and I can go get new apps as well, that type of scenario. All right, so hopefully that gives you kind of a rough overview of what's changed in sharing. I like the model. I think it still has a few tweaks to be done, but Microsoft is definitely headed in the right direction, and they're making this available to us right away so as they start to make additional changes around like some of the information you saw and some of the items that were announced yesterday at the Data Insights Conference. This is definitely a great play for them, and it's definitely going to be a better solution for us overall when it comes to sharing. All right. Premium. I created my deck prior to yesterday's announcement. So there you go. I thought I'd just cross out and show you that, like usual, when it comes to Power BI, within minutes of doing something, it could possibly change. So I want to talk through Power BI Premium and read-only users. What I want to be cautious of here is what I'm going to talk about is using Power BI Premium to support your online experience, not your on-premises solution. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you're interested in Power BI Premium as far as supporting the on-premise solution, that has a completely different security context and really is not driven by Power BI because you're not pushing to the cloud. So there's a number of things around that are not the same. So let's keep that in context. We're talking about Power BI Premium and its online implementation. So Power BI Premium was officially released yesterday, and they announced that at the Data Insights Conference as well. It supports read-only, and this is where I believe that Power BI Premium has a security story beyond the number of users that you engage. So, and I actually am missing one bullet here to talk about as well for those folks who have additional security concerns. Let's talk through what Power BI Premium brings to the security for an online implementation. First of all, supporting read-only using apps. The ability to publish something with an app to to Premium, and then making sure that only read-only users can get to it means that they have access to the app, they have full interaction and do everything you would normally do within the app, but they would not have the ability to update the content or make changes like that. This is a pretty big deal. One of the biggest gaps within Power BI was this concept of read-only users. And this also means that if you run Power BI Premium, you can actually use the equivalent of free users as your read-only users. So it will support essentially an unlimited number of free users that are read-only. So as you build out the solution, you scale Power BI Premium based on performance and content. Basically how big is it? So you basically when it starts, you have to start having performance issues, and you can start working through some of those nuances. Contributors will still require Power BI Pro licenses. They're the ones that basically create the apps. This is really a great model for organizations that are able to take advantage of it. A couple things to be aware of. Right now, P1 licensing is $5,000 a month, give or take a few dollars. And I don't know what your EA would look like or if it's changing thing, but that's where it is. That does not include your pro licenses, by the way, just so we're all clear on that. So it's $5,000 a month plus how many pro licenses you need. Now, that being said, the other security thing that I don't have on the slide that is really important to understand in Power BI Premium, if you have a regulatory requirement to have physical separation on the server of your data, Power BI Premium will help you meet that requirement. Power BI Premium is a dedicated server to be used for you in your environment. If you need to separate it out by customers, you can actually initiate multiple servers as needed within your organization. So keep in mind that this allows you to actually take advantage of everything that's in Power BI because all the online capability is there, as well as getting physical separation on servers, so you're no longer in a shared space. Microsoft talks about it being, reducing noisy neighbors and all those kind of things, but in the security context, this could help you meet a regulatory requirement that you previously could not. So as you start to work through what that means for you and your organization, the price point is really you're paying for that level of security and performance. If you need these capabilities, this is how you pay for those capabilities. Microsoft has made it fairly straightforward from a pricing standpoint. People who build content need a pro license. This does not prevent, I want to be really clear, this does not prevent users who have a free license or equivalent from creating their own content and publishing said content to their workspace. They would still have that capability. They just would no longer be able to share it. So what changes there is that there's no share option. We'll talk about that change in free users, but in this context, it's important to understand that as you engage with Premium, the idea is that you have two distinct classes of users at this point. You have those that can create content and share it, and you have those and consume any content out there that they have permissions to. And then you have a group of people who can create personal content that they cannot share, so that they might either for their own analysis or limited use case, but they are not able to share it. So they would actually have to work with the pro users to actually get the content shared, providing a level of separation and duty and a number of other things that are there to provide that expertise. So at the end of the day, what that comes down to is a user could actually go out and use Power BI Desktop, which is free and anyone can use it, build out reports, and then work with a pro user to then publish that content forward. So there you have some processes that still need to work through, but Premium has really gone, goes a long way from the security perspective to provide us with a capability to get read-only users and really take advantage of free users in the proper way. Changes to free user. If you haven't seen this already, chances are really good that somebody will have complained within your organization or you have complained yourself. And free users are no longer allowed to share or view shared content. So that means, that goes back to what Premium would be, but collaboration only if you support Power BI Pro and Power BI Premium. What this means when you're calculating costs for your organization for using Power BI and understanding the security implication is that this goes back to guidance that I have provided since the beginning, is that if you want to collaborate and take advantage of user groups and workspaces and those type of scenarios, everybody in your organization requires a Power BI Pro. The only situation where that is not true anymore is if you are running Power BI Premium. So as you start to do cost analysis and functionality analysis around security, understanding what that means, this actually gives you a pretty clear path. Microsoft has basically made it so free users can no longer share. By doing so, have forced everyone to essentially what I was advising before, Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium. Free users, but the trade-off, so there is a trade-off. Free users can now access all the capabilities. So you can actually access gateways, take advantage of Q&A and quick insights. There's no functional differences outside of collaboration. and some of the deployment options, which are essentially part of collaboration. Those are the only things that are not available for users now. So all the actual functional pieces, the ability to use a gateway to get access on-premise data, which becomes significant when someone's trying to use a gateway to access, that information just for analytic purposes, right? So they may not be publishing, but they just want to be able to access that information. They get that. That also allows a free user to access, actually I don't think, I'll double check that one, but it allows them to access that data more readily. Q&A, they can take advantage of Q&A and quick insights and take advantage of some of the more advanced learning features that are possible within the solution, giving them the ability to take advantage of that where they couldn't before. For users within your organization, I believe that they actually have, if you're in a transition state, be sure to talk with Microsoft about the ability to turn on Pro licensing in the preview, or sorry, basically as a trial license. They'll actually support trial licenses of Pro, especially if you're looking to transition to premium, to help you with the transition and not incur the cost of Pro licensing while you're in the transition. So just be aware of that. Okay, so that's the coverage I had on Power BI Premium and the changes that were made, as well as the apps. One of the big questions that came up in the last session was auditing. What do we have available for auditing? What can we do? And there are 3 auditing options that are there. The first one is the newest. So dashboard usage metrics are newly released. They are a dashboard view of your data or a view of your usage, and really are designed to help the report designers understand who is using their content they've generated. So basically anybody who creates content should have access to that. So I'll have a look at that in just a second here. But you can see views, viewers, shared, and some customizable options. It's actually the most flexible of all the solutions, and is really directed at analyzing analysis of usage by the content creators. So it's pretty cool from that perspective. You also have usage metrics in the admin portal. This is a subscription view, so everything that's going on within your entire subscription. And what is only available to Power BI admins right now. So you would not have access to this if you are not a Power BI admin. And then it actually gives you some more information around users and groups and assets and so on. So let's have a look at these 2 options in real time here. So first thing is dashboard usage metrics. So this can be found. Let's go back here. Grab Ben Artisdale so you can actually see it. Those of you who've done dashboard in a day should be familiar with this dashboard. So along the top here, they've added a new menu option called usage metrics. This usage metrics will be on every dashboard that's created now, and you as a creator should have access to this to be able to see what is actually going on. So we click the usage metrics in this dashboard, and it's going to fire up and load up what happened. You'll notice that some of the comments I made are actually pretty clear in text. So views per day, we got unique viewers per day. I haven't done a lot of sharing. I find that's kind of funny because I'm pretty much the unique user in my environment. So you can see that we actually have pretty much 1 across the board. And then views per day, how many times I was working with it. This is probably a dashboard in a day, and I was hitting it quite a bit during demos and so on. And then, of course, we have total share rate. You can see that that's not there as well. We also have options to filter this. It doesn't really apply to a lot of what I'm doing, but we actually can look at if we're just sharing it directly. So basically, if you click the share button, how are you sharing it? And then is it being shared through Workspace? Or on the platform side, you can actually see who's viewing it from mobile versus web. So this is the beginning. It's kind of the first release of this set of metrics. What is interesting about this is if we, let me see, where do I have this at? So this is a report. So you notice this isn't a dashboard stuff. It's actually a usage report. And I believe, let me see where I got this at. This is one of those fun ones. There we go. So I'm going to walk you through this. I forgot, it doesn't show the edit button until we actually do it. So if we save a copy of this usage metric, what's really important about that is we go from just having this to actually the ability to get the edit report. So a couple things, you can actually pin the page, but we can actually go in here. And now we're in edit mode. And what I really want you to be aware of, if you're trying to get good metrics, or you're trying to track something in particular from an auditing perspective, you actually have available to you a number of filter or a number of assets coming out of Power BI now. So your dashboard lists, accounts and dashboards, all this information's here. So anything you see on the dashboard, you now have the ability to create your own content around. One of the interesting ones, if we remove the filter, let's go back to remove the filter, and then we will actually be able to see all the dashboards in here, and you can see that my graph is adjusted. It's still updating everything, so we can see total usage across the organization. So this gives you the ability that anything I created, and I can actually see all the content I've worked on. You can see I actually do have a share. I shared it, looks like 6 times on one of the days that we're working in it, and so on. What I want you to be aware of is that you can now actually produce this content, and if you want to create your own dashboard, because we've already done this, so remember it's file save, I can actually pin this visual to my, we'll just go ahead and pin it to that dashboard. And I should have that visual down here. So now I can see, I can actually put viewer metrics on my dashboard to kind of show the popularity of that dashboard if that's something I want to do. So, in this case, I wasn't filtered by dashboard, so it's kind of not valid for what we're talking about. This is all the views I have across the board in my workspace. So this is one of those things to look at and, be able to add that functionality. While not full auditing, it does provide the ability for you to create an auditing type dashboard around that type of usage. The other type of usage that we're looking at is in the admin portal, we can actually go to the usage metrics. Now, I like this one if I'm trying to find out who is doing stuff. You notice the other one was kind of generic, didn't really talk about users. In this case, we can see a number, how many user dashboards are created, the number of reports, but we can also see who has been using it. So based on the users that are in the organization, so of the 82 users that have created dashboards, you can see who they were. We can also go down here and start looking at consumption. Some of this is dated. I haven't made the update to show apps yet, or app, we're still using groups in this context. But basically, you can see now I got the top users per report. So I can see people who are active. The caveat here is that I have not found where this data is available outside of this portal. Now, it may be available outside of this portal, but I am not aware of that. So when you start to look at what's here, this has got some great auditing information and some great information about what's going on, and very helpful, but not easily distributed. So you will need to work with your Power BI admins to get this content at the moment. At this point, I don't have a great use case. Curious. And it's not truly a dashboard. While it's shaped like our dashboards, I don't believe. Yeah. There's no ability like to export or anything like that from here. So just be aware of that. So anyways, this data is being collected and is available for reference. The question is, where is it at? We don't know kind of all the pieces to that and what's going on. So I want you to be aware of that. The next one is audit logs. Right away, you'll notice an issue. Audit logs are managed in Office 365. So this means you have to not only be a Power BI admin, you need to be an Office 365 admin or have the permissions to view audit logs in some way. And so this has got some pretty awesome things. So let's look through what's in here. Oh, well, I'll show that I have a slide on this too, but we'll talk through a little bit since we're already here. So this audit log has the ability to search. So as you can see here, I've searched for people who have viewed my Power BI dashboard. We'll look into what activities are covered from 5:30 to 6:14 and how many times I've actually viewed a dashboard. Now, This is still a work in progress. I believe there's still some pieces where Microsoft is continuing to add to what's here. But right now, this is what we have. So right now, I can tell you the date I did it, the IP address I was actually operating from, my username or whichever users are there, the activity I participated in. Like I said, we'll look at all the activities here in a moment. The item I was looking at. So I'm obviously going to be all in dashboards, but here's the name of the dashboards I was looking for. And any other detailed notes. Now in this case, there's no data classification. So this is one of those areas where if you use data classification like we talked about in the original the 411 presentation, you can actually go out here and use this to see what's happening with data that has been classified. What's nice here is we can actually go ahead and save or download all results. So now we have the ability to actually export these results out so we can actually use them later. We have the ability to further filter, so I can actually go in here and say I am looking for Van Arsdale and so on. And I can see the reports and it does a quick filtering for us. So this is a great way to do true auditing. This information is held on to it if you need to dump this into for more analysis. You can drop it to, you know, export the data out on a regular basis. My understanding is that auditing can be scripted. I was digging and did not see clearly any way of doing that. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. It's likely buried in some PowerShell scripting log somewhere that I haven't run across yet. But we'll continue to get you this information. One thing I will make you aware of, this file, folder, or site, remember this is an audit log for all of Office 365, which is essentially some variation on SharePoint and a few other things. Everything else is running in Office 365. So I tried using this filter. This did not work for any of my Power BI assets. That could be I was putting the wrong URL in or something to that effect. But realistically, this filter or this search apparatus doesn't work that great. We can actually go over here and get the same information or filter the results. So that being said, if we create a new one of these, one of the things to be aware of, like I said, this covers everything within Power BI, within Office 365. So you can see all the different things that are here, which is well beyond the scope of what we're covering today. So they make search actually work for us, so we can actually plug in Power BI. And you can see we have the following Power BI activities that are covered. Oops. Go back here. So these are the Power BI activities that are covered. Some of this I'm not quite sure why it feels like some pieces are missing here and there, but full coverage on the dashboard. Dashboard is a Power BI service asset only, so I think it's fully audited from that perspective. We have the exporting, so if you're looking at managing who's doing what with the data, you can actually build out exports and prints, downloads, and publish it to web. Hopefully, if you have that turned off, that won't be a problem. And more export and deletions. It's interesting they don't have in here created a Power BI report, which is a possibility in the online experience, but not covered here. You have the ability to know who's creating groups and so on. And you see here we got the organizational Power BI content pack. So once again, an area where that should be updated shortly to handle apps and App Workspaces as we move forward. So this gives you a lot of visibility into what's happening in the Power BI experience online, and it really becomes part of what you want to be aware of, right? So if we go through these processes, it will help you, you can actually go ahead and figure out what you need to audit. And if you have requests for more things to be tracked, of course, I would put that out on Microsoft's site in Power BI to say, hey, this auditing is great, but we're missing a couple components. Here's a couple of things you want to do. You can actually add an alert policy based on the audit. So you can actually say alert when and go ahead and say, you can say, hey, I want to know when a Power BI dashboard is edited and by so-and-so. You can either put it by a user or you can just leave it as when it's edited. You notice it's missing the filter operation here. So if I want to know when a specific dashboard is edited, I will have to, work through all the alerts. So it's, like I said, it still treats it as very high level from an Office 365 standpoint. It's not quite at the granularity that we would need for some of the other alerts that we'd want. but at least this is a step in the right direction for us, and we're trying to get more auditing capability within the tool set. So here's all the activities. Basically, this is a list on the presentation. I did this so that you would actually have this available to you, whether you can actually get into the audit section or not. I want to make sure that everyone who's attending, whether you have permissions in that group, understands what can be audited. So if you're actually trying to track through some activities, this gives you the ability to say, to let your admins know, hey, can you create an audit report? Here's the activities I want in the report, and here's how I want to export it. This is just a sample of the log content, so when you're looking at it, keep in mind you can filter by any of the items that are in a column header. I don't call that out here, but you can actually do that. So when you're doing your search, like in my case, I was looking at created Power BI dashboards. I gave it a date range. Didn't set any users, so you can see that I had another user from one of my dashboard and day events actually create a dashboard from Van Arsdale with RLS. That's what it's called. So this gives you the ability to, say, hey, I just want to track certain activity. Maybe I don't want to alert. Maybe I just want to run the report every day and have that available to me. Keep in mind, if you can run the report, export the results to a CSV file. You can drop that CSV file into a folder, whether it's on, folder wherever it's on your share, or even if it's in Azure Blob Storage. You can put that content out there, and then you can build a Power BI report on this information to build out some of the reporting you would need. The biggest problem you're going to have is you're going to have to work with your Office 365 admin to get these exports on a regular basis. According to some content, it's still in preview. I think we're seeing some of those effects, but it's still usable, even in a preview state. The other thing is, like we talked about, you have to have Office 365 admin privileges. And it's not just designed for Power BI, it covers everything in Office 365. So while it's helpful and it's there, there's still some things to take into consideration. I would definitely encourage you to do more investigation on the newer features that Microsoft brought to bear around looking at dashboards and the analysis there, because you might get better information around what you're looking for in that context. Couple resources to wrap it up. We had at dataonwheels.com, I already have blog posts on 5 of these. My plan is to add 2 to 3 more posts around what was the content covered today. And then, of course, when it comes to security, you should be aware of the Microsoft Trust Center and the security white paper that is available from Microsoft. You can grab more training from us on Power BI. And at this point, are there any questions out there?
Hey, Steve. I'm going to read out some questions for you. Let's see. Let me pick out some good ones here. Okay. Are specific user IDs available for this type of reporting? I'm not really sure what they're referring to there. I know it's kind of hard to go back on the questions once you've done the whole presentation. Is there an easy way to schedule the export of all the usage data so that we can keep more than 90 days worth?
I don't believe so at this point, but at the same time, like all the audit logs are scriptable with PowerShell. And if that's the case, then you should be able to do that. So you can actually set up a PowerShell script that runs on a regular basis and downloads that and moves it over to a file. So you should be able to do that with PowerShell.
Okay. How do you know you're the admin user?
Oh, that's kind of funny, because that's the easiest way to see that is if you, let's get out of here. In this year, it's going to show admin portal or not. If you're not an admin user, you will not see the admin portal option in your dropdown. In which case, you'd have to ask Office 365, the folks that manage your Office 365 usage, to add you as a Power BI admin user. And there is a new, so in the portal, with the premium settings, they actually, I believe, another setting now that you can actually you can manage the premium content. So you may get the admin portal, but only see premium content, which I noticed in a number of Microsoft demos. That's on the product.
Okay, next question here. Right now, for an Azure SQL DB, we need to allow all Azure services to access the database to allow Power BI to query it. Can we get a specific IP with Power BI Premium?
I don't believe you can today, and I would definitely ask that question out to Microsoft on PowerBI.com. I know that one of the things they're talking about is the ability to better manage what's going on as a result, including they were talking about deploying our content directly to that server. So what you're asking for may not be, it may be something that can be done. My concern there would be if that is the case, you potentially would have to actually add a gateway to support that, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, here's another one for you. I've created data models using data from an on-prem SQL Server database and using data from an Excel file stored on SharePoint 365/OneDrive. When I try to manually refresh on PowerBI.com, I receive an error, and when I try to schedule a refresh, my Enterprise Gateway option is not an option, and the SQL Server instance is within the gateway. And I receive a credentials error on SQL Server. Any idea why I'm receiving this type of error? Is it something I can resolve through the admin portal? Kind of long, but
I don't know if you can resolve that through the admin portal. I believe, how does that work? The biggest question there would be the credentials that you're using. I think usually this happens because the credentials that you use when you're going through Power BI are not formatted the same as the credentials that are being used in SQL Server. And you got to make sure that you're actually in the group on the gateway that has access. So if you are able to manage the gateway, there should be the ability to make sure the users who can publish reports. So you need to make sure you're in that user list. But if you're still getting permission errors, even though you're in the user list, chances are you need to double check what it looks like to SQL Server. I'm trying to remember. We ran into this a couple times. Please follow up with me on that question directly. You have my email information. I'll try to get you a little bit of help on that.
Okay, here's another one. Can a user that is not part of the App Workspace group make a copy of an app report and data set so that they can make their own reports based upon the app like they can do in content packs?
From what I could tell, I don't believe that functionality is available anymore. But I haven't tested it fully because apps are so new yet.
Okay, another question here. Can you talk about the data classification option and how that can be used?
Data classification is, basically a tag like you see on here in the top of my workspace and my dashboard, and it's only a tag. The only other place I've seen it used is it's visually placed here, and I saw it in the app. It's in the audit logs, saying the type of classification that we're looking at. Beyond that, it's just a tag. It's all process orientation for you as a user and organization to leverage.
Got it. Another question here from John. Is a Power BI app a compiled application like a UWP app that would be in the Windows Store?
No. It is actually it's a collection of objects from Power BI, but it's not really a compiled app at that point.
Okay. Is it possible to share a data set as read-only with a group so that the user can drag or drop to create their own reports. For this user says, when I use a workspace, it seems all users can edit or delete the assets.
Yeah, so that's part of what's changing. I haven't tried that with one of my read-only users to make sure I can actually get there to do that change. When they change their free permissions, I kind of threw some of my testing off. I know that you can make the data set a target for people to use, which may be a better option. If you look at it, let me see if I have desktop up. I don't think I do. In Power BI Desktop, you can now target data sets that live out in Power BI, and that may be a better option for you. So they can actually use existing data sets out there, and then they can use that to create their own content and publish accordingly. We'll go on to the next question. I'll wait till the desktop pops up on mine, and then I can show you that real quick.
Okay. When adding roles/row level security, can we import the emails for each role using a CSV file?
I don't believe so. I don't think there's any place to put them. Because you have to add those users to roles, and I am not aware of any way to actually import those at this point.
Okay. Are you ready with that, or you want me to ask you another question here?
Go ahead and ask another question here.
Okay. Outside of premium, can it be limited? Who can publish apps?
If you have a pro license, you can publish apps. That's the only limitation that you have. They haven't locked that down any type.
Okay. Another one, are you able to add AD groups instead of individual users when granting access to workspaces?
Not yet. That is coming. Real quickly on the get data, you can now see we have Power BI service. And it actually will show all the workspaces I have access to and all the data sets within those workspaces. So I can now, this is one of the nice features that is available. I can actually create content based on workspaces that are managed independently of what I'm doing. All right. Next question.
Okay. Is there a particular technical risk of sharing with external users? In other words, other than the obvious lack of control over users sharing data, is data shared externally less encrypted, etc.?
No, there's no difference in that perspective. It's really about the pushing your business's data outside of your control. That's it.
Okay. Okay, so this one, it's not security related, but this is a general question, as the user doesn't have Power BI yet. I want to know if you can access data from any version of SQL Server like 2012 and any version of Excel and Power BI to create dashboards and reports.
You can. It pretty much is the connectivity within Power BI covers a huge swath of data components. So like Excel is handled. I believe that you can do from 2000. You might be able to do 2003. But I definitely know from there forward you can. And then of course all these different data types. So file data types, databases, as long as the database is supported on the standard, 2012 for sure supported. 2008 supported. 2005 you might actually have to use an ODBC. I can't remember. But it has like a generic ODBC driver and generic ODB driver as well. So you can actually pretty much get to any data source that you want and match that data up. I would encourage you, if you've never used Power BI, to go ahead and download Desktop and give it a try. It's the easiest way to experience a lot of this.
Okay, I think we can fit in a few more questions here. In the situation the data set is renamed, is there a way to track the original data source?
Okay, not to my knowledge. I'm not, that one I may need more information on, because if you're talking, if you rename the data set and the data source behind it is what you're looking at, there are some new features that allow you to see dependencies, which may get you what you're looking for, but I'm not sure. So.
All right, let's do one more question here before noon. Can you set up dashboards for external partners to view?
Yes, actually in Premium, that's a lot easier than it was before. But you can do that, and that's for publish to web. So we have a number of customers that look at doing this. Primarily, they use an embedded scenario, and Power BI Premium is replacing a lot of the current embedded scenarios. That's usually the best option because you basically are tying security to the container of the information. Otherwise, if you want to actually share it to email addresses outside of your organization, what you'd have to do is actually put them in your Azure Active Directory groups in order to give them access otherwise. So it's all based on your domain name.
Awesome. All right, well, we got through most of the questions. Great job. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for you here, Steve. So thank you so much for presenting today, and thank you everyone who attended for joining our webinar today. As always, we will be sending all registrants a follow-up email, including a link to the full recording of today's webinar. I know that's always a popular question. You can also find the recording on our website at pragmaticworks.com. Again, thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday for another free training session.